Hi everyone, how are you? Thank you, welcome. Thank you for being here today. This is my first Nordic.js, and I get to come as a speaker, you know, because I'm a freeloader, I guess. And so I'm delighted to be here to talk to you today about how JavaScript, the language, evolves. And there's so much light, I can't see any of you. What you can expect in the next 2 to 3 years about it. So my name's Christophe, and I actually got a clicker. I just moved back to. My name's Christophe. I come from Paris, France. Even if I don't speak like this, so you cannot immediately peg me as French, but I am actually French. And this might be illegal in French not to speak English like this, but I'm outside of French jurisdiction, so that's fine. And so yeah, I've got this small company. We do kick-ass training live and remote about all the things we love. Yeah, perhaps some of you saw me at .js, if you went to .js or stuff like that. So yeah, ES2025, what ES? Why not JS? Okay, so that's a weird thing. Quick recap, there's something called ECMA, the European Computers Manufacturers Association. And it's a standards body, just like the ISO, the IETF, W3C, the WHAT working group. And they are the caretakers of a number of standards, and 3 of those standards are ECMAScript, which is the actual official standard for JavaScript. Hence the ES in ES6, ES2015, ES2022, and so forth. ECMA 402, which is the INTL API, which you should absolutely use because it's amazing. And ECMA 404, which is JSON, stuff like that. And that group used to work behind closed doors, and since ES2015, it's completely different. It's all in the open. You've got this github.com/tc39 where you have absolutely everything. They meet every 2 months, January, March, May, and so forth. And every 2 months for 2 days, they hash out all the new presentations, all the advancements in person or through Zoom or something to just move the language forward. And it's basically around 40 people at any given time, which represent all the stakeholders. So obviously you've got Google and Mozilla and Microsoft and so forth, but also like Bloomberg, Boku, PayPal, Netflix, all of these with a strong stake in JavaScript, helping move the language forward and helping bring real-world perspective and feedback about the features. And Microsoft has a number of people there, if only because of TypeScript, for instance. It's a yearly release cycle ever since ES 2015. If you want to hear a lot of horror stories about the early days of JavaScript development all the way to 2015, grab me during breaks. I've got a whole of like Stranger Things anecdotes about the JavaScript development, especially the stillborn ES4. And it's all transparent and public. You can see all the agendas, all the minutes of the meetings online. Everybody can comment and provide feedback at any time to GitHub issues. And there's this yearly cycle. Every year we feature freeze what's ready around January or March, and then it percolates through the bureaucracy and the red tape of ECMA, and you got a new edition of the standard every year in June, but by then, usually the features that become official have been natively implemented everywhere for 1 to 3 years already. So you usually use them ahead of time. And there are 5 stages to that process. Okay, stage 0 to stage 5. I'm going to stage 4. I'm going to go fast through those slides. There's a link to the slides. They're online at the end, so you can go through them at your own pace. But this is a 30-minute talk for a 6-hour material. So I had to prune that relentlessly to something that could physically be listenable to in 30 minutes. But I still have to go a bit fast with some of these. So stage 0, I mean, you can create a GitHub repo with a markdown file today and be a stage 0. Right? Like, I want a unicorn, like the actual unicorn emoji operator that would do something. And then if you get someone on the TC39 to champion that, to introduce that to the committee during meetings, to say, I want to explore that, can I? Then you get stage 1. The barrier to entry is very low. There's a lot of stuff at stage 1 that will never see the light of day. And then once that API is actually complete, that the initial spec text is there, you have formalized it, the syntax is well-defined and stuff, you get to stage 2. That's a strong step. Usually stuff that goes to stage 2 will eventually be there in the language. And stage 3 is when everything is done about the specification, everything is ready. Now what we need to get to the final stage, stage 4, which means that that's it, you're going to be official, is important. We need 2 native implementations. Usually V8 and SpiderMonkey are the ones doing it most of the time. Sometimes Squirrelfish. And we need a full test suite. There's something called the Test 262 test suite. It provides full conformance tests for JavaScript engines about every single nitty-gritty detail of the language, and you have to have a complete set of tests in there for your feature. Then you're stage 4, which means that you're going to be in the next feature freeze, and you're going to be official at that time. So disclaimer, 30-minute talk, I can't possibly cover everything. JavaScript is evolving so fast, JavaScript and its standard library. So you've got, right now, 2 finished ES23 proposals. So they are at stage 4. Sometimes stuff goes to stage 4 like in May, and that's just like 2 months too late. You know, they're going to be in the next year's cycle. We've got 15 stage 3 proposals, 23 stage 2 proposals, and like 45 stage 1 proposals. I can't possibly cover that. This is a curated list. There's a lot of stuff I like that I couldn't put in this slides because 30 minutes. So if I don't cover, if you have questions about stuff I'll cover today, if you have questions about stuff I did not cover today, features that you wonder whether they're going to come in the language at some point, or you heard about them, you have questions, please, please, please go find me during the breaks and lunch, and I'll do my utmost to provide you with a really good answer. A quick recap about just a few of the things in the recent years that I don't hear too many people talk about. Not the obvious ones like optional chaining or top-level await that most people know about, but there are a few things like match all. I'm a sucker for regular expressions, and I'm fine. Okay, but I mean, maybe some of you know that you can isolate stuff in your regex using capturing groups. And the thing is, when you do a global regex, you will get all the full matches, but you will not have the groups. So you have to pick between, I get a single match, but I have the groups, and I get all the matches, but I lose my groups. So that kind of sucks. You could have both doing some gymnastics with sticky regular expressions. Now we have match all in ES2020. And match all lets you have both, okay? So if you have that kind of need, if you've run into that roadblock before, know that it's there. It's pretty cool. Also using named capture groups here. Also, you probably know promises. You probably know promise all and promise race. They've been here since ES2015. In 2020 and 2021, we finally got promise any and promise all settled. They cover all the use cases, okay? Promise all shortcuts on the first rejection, promise race shortcuts on the first settlement, promise any shortcuts on the first fulfillment, so the first success when you pit several strategies for the same result and you just want the fastest one that works. And promise all settled doesn't shortcut. So it will always go to the end of all those promises and give you an array of results that tells you that worked, that didn't work, here's the value, here's the error. That's great for like test runners, for instance, when you want all the tests to go to the end, even the failing ones, and you want to report. Okay. Class fields, for those of you who do OOP in JavaScript, who haven't figured it out yet, that functions are the answer. We finally have all those syntaxes that have been burning on the stove for like over a decade. Okay, they were in the ES4 specification. They've been talked about since 1999 at the TC39, and they finally all landed this year. Okay, so basically what this means is that we have field initializers, so instance field, static fields, and we have everything can be private with that hash sign, which is what we call a sigil. There are a lot of details about this that I won't get into, but basically those are actually private because JavaScript runs in the browser in the same space as malware browser extensions, right? So you have to be actually private. There is absolutely no programmatic way for code outside of your class body to access the private fields in your class. We also have static initializer blocks when you want to do static level initialization of multiple fields at the same time, or of private static fields that weren't initialized at declaration. And you can have multiple ones that run top to bottom with static initialization. And we also have the @ methods on all built-in iterables. So you might know that on arrays, you can use negative indices on stuff like slice and splice and all this. Negative indices are from the end. -1 is the last one, -2 is the penultimate one, and so forth. And they're extremely useful. We have them in Ruby and many other languages. But you can't use them with the square brackets, because the square brackets is a generic operator. It's called the indirect indexing operator. And the semantics of it is that the property exists, cool. The property doesn't exist, not cool. And the property -1 does not exist on an array, right? So it can't return the last one just to be convenient. So there was talk for a while of a last item method, and in the end we went more generic. We have @, which works on all the built-in iterables. So arrays, strings with Unicode code points, maps, sets, your own iterable objects. Well, no, built-in iterables only. Node list, stuff like that. And you can use any negative index in there. And so @-1 is finally freeing you from like my array square, my array.length -1. Okay, finally. Also, there's a shortcut for the Hazon property hack that was best practice, which you see at top. We finally have a shortcut for that. So that's the things recently that many people have not heard about. Now let's talk about the future, because that's what this talk is about, and I'm only 11 minutes in. ES 2023 pretty much guaranteed or very likely to make the cut for the next feature freeze. So find from last, that's a lot of standard library. We've had find and find index ever since ES 2015. We've had that go from the beginning and take a predicate. We've had, on the other hand, last index off and reduce right to do some stuff from the end of the array, but we didn't have anything to find with predicates from the end of the array. Some people used to do a reverse, which is very intensive and mutates the array. We finally have find last and find last index with the exact same semantics as their cousins from the beginning, but they're from the end, okay, and they're more performant. So we finally have those. This is stage 4 already. Same for the hash brand grammar. If you've been doing Node, especially terminal or CLI scripts in Node, which I do a lot of, on POSIX systems like Unix and Linux and so forth, you start them with a hash bang, stuff like that. You give them the execution bit, and you can use them as a regular executable command. Now, Node and many other environments used to see that and strip it so that you could require or import those modules and it would work like a regular module. But it wasn't in the official standard, so you couldn't do that in front-end scripts loaded through the script tag or web workers or like client-side imports, dynamic imports. Now it's becoming part of the language, and so any JavaScript runtime has the duty to check the beginning, the very first bytes of the source text, and if they see that, they strip it. So that's one further step towards universal JavaScript, right? Now, when you see a small blue dot in the title, it's the current stage, okay? All of these are close enough to completion that there's a strong chance they're gonna make the next feature freeze and be in ES 2023 officially, but perhaps it'll be ES 2024 if we're unlucky. Most of them you can already play with, either because they're implemented natively, or because there's a Babel transform, or because there's a polyfill, and you can already use that. The first thing is temporal. We've been waiting for temporal for well over a decade, okay? We can all agree that the date type in JavaScript and in Java, because it's exactly the same one, sucks. That's a technical term. Some of it is not their fault. Some of it goes all the way back to the libc. The fact that months start at 0, libc, Linux kernel, stuff like that. The fact that, and then the fact that 0 is a Sunday is, well, the US. Yeah, you don't know. But anyway, you use, when you do time manipulation, first, true friends never let their friends write a calendar. Okay? Ever. You have no idea how time has been a mess, especially backwards. You know, check yourcalendricalfallacyis.com. You won't believe it. Anyway, you use moment or Luxon or date events or stuff like that to do your time slicing and dicing. And even that doesn't cover everything. It doesn't cover like recurring dates within the year, stuff that is just a day and a month. You know, it doesn't cover dates as separate from time. It doesn't cover this kind of thing. There's not always a distinction between a duration and an interval, which are not the same concept. So Temporal has been in the works for half a decade. It gathered input from all the possible stakeholders. It has like 5 champions at the TC39 working tirelessly on this. It's finally there, it's finally ready. You can see that there are extensive docs, extensive cookbooks with playgrounds. There's a polyfill. And it's in the final steps of stage 3 right now. And you can use that already through various ways, and it's amazing. Here's a small example that just has dates alone and a specific time, and it combines those dates and times in the within a specific time zone, and obviously at that specific date, one of those time zones has daylight saving times, the other one doesn't, and so forth, so it's not going to be the same time. It's all adjusted. It handles recurring times, recurring events beautifully. The API is amazing. It's all immutable, and it's a great complement to INTL. So Temporal is good and lets you shave 100 kilobytes of those bundles by removing Luxon and moment and date events and all that, and gain features. Array grouping, you know, like you've got an array, you want to group the items by a specific key, a specific value, a specific computed predicate. You use Lodash, of course you do. Well, you won't have to use Lodash. We finally have group that produces an object, so the keys have to be strings or symbols, and group to map, which produces a map, which means the keys can be anything, including null, undefined, not a number, okay? So these are definitely making the cut for ES2023. I'd be very surprised if they didn't. Import assertions and JSON modules. So import assertions, in that little syntax you can see, assert with various information in there. Currently the only information is type, but that's going to be extended over time. And this provides additional metadata to the engine about expectations we have for that import. You know, so right now, like a specific type of data in there, so that it doesn't auto-detect, so that it can verify that the data is valid according to the type. And so the TC39 has jurisdiction over the language itself, so it specified it for static imports and dynamic imports. And there is a suggestion in the spec to other standards bodies for the web worker instantiation, which is very much the what working group, and the HTML script tag as well for equivalent features. And right now, the first use case for it is JSON modules, which were originally specified in ES2015 and got stripped because of a few various issues about script loading. And so you can specify, this actually works in Node already for a while, okay? And you can specify this is going to be a JSON, and you should verify that it's indeed JSON you're loading. And so this gives us native JSON modules. They used to be behind a flag in Node. Now they're not experimental anymore. They're built in since, I think, Node 16 or 17. Regular expression fan. There's a V flag that is pretty great. It replaces the U flag, which is all the Unicode goodness. And you still have the U flag, but sometimes you need what are called nested classes. Classes are basically sets of characters, predefined sets of characters, or computed sets of characters. And we used to have something called Unicode properties, for instance. That's the /p curly something. And it lets you do differences between sets or intersections of sets to very easily, in a much more compact way, describe subsets, specific subsets of characters. For instance, here you've got every single decimal number in Unicode in every script, except the ASCII ones. So you've got this double minus between the first class, which is the Unicode property escape, and the second class, which is like square bracket 0-9 square bracket. Below is like every Khmer letter. Khmer is Cambodia, okay? And the Cambodian script, and but in the Khmer script, you've got everything. They have specific digits, specific diacritics, specific punctuation, not just letters. So by using that double ampersand, we do an intersection of these, and that class is only going to match Khmer letters. So that gives us a lot more expressiveness, and that's pretty cool. Still about regexes, we've had in ES2018 named capture groups that let us not use numbers which are maintenance hell for capturing groups, but give them actual names. That's great, except there was an oversight in the spec. And if we had an alternative with the pipe character, so if we said, okay, so this is going to match either this or this or this, and that alternative was just different forms of the same data, we wanted to be able to use the same name for the same data, basic piece of data, in the various parts of the alternative, and we couldn't. So that's going to be fixed. That's very, very likely going to be in ES 2023. Now, beyond that, stuff that might not make the cut, I'd be happily surprised if it does, or there's no chance it's going to be in 2023, but there's a solid chance it's going to be in 24 or 25. Change array by copy. Array has a number of immutable methods that derive an array from it, like concat and slice, filter, map, stuff like that. And it has a lot of mutative methods that modify the array, like shift, unshift, pop, push, splice. A lot of people don't realize that reverse and sort mutate the array, especially sort. And we need an immutable variant for this, okay? Instead of having to first copy it and then change it. So we have 2 reversed and 2 sorted and 2 spliced coming in. And one that is really cool because it's a nightmare to do by hand, it's very verbose, is I want that array, but with a single cell changed. So instead of doing a slice, concat, slice, I can just say with and add that position, that new value, and that gives me a new array with just that cell changed. So that's pretty cool. Decorators. Decorators are very popular, especially in the TypeScript world, but not just there. You've got entire frameworks using decorators. This should have been stage 4 ages ago, and then someone at the back of the room raised their hand and says, oh, I just discovered a very, very gnarly edge case, and we have to redesign everything. And the entire TC39 was like, dude, shut up! And we went back to stage 1, actually. It took forever. So the spec was pruned and updated and everything. But it is at stage 3 now. We just missed a few tests in test 262. It might even be in 2023, but that seems like a long shot. It's definitely going to be in the next 3 years. In the meantime, Babel or TypeScript transpile those for you. So feel free to use them. They do that in a spec-compatible way. Shadow realms is something you might not know. It is something I can guarantee that people like Ives from Code Sandbox and many others are tracking closely, people working on GitHub code spaces, server-side rendering, safe user scripting, all of that. It's a formal, highly customizable way to sandbox code execution, to run some JavaScript in a completely isolated global environment with specific bindings. And there's a formal API for that, and it's much faster than stuff we have, and much safer than stuff we have right now. And it's part of the standard library, so it works the same in Node, in web browsers and all that. So it's going to be pretty cool. It's going to be pretty useful. At stage 2, we've got tons of stuff about iterators and collections, because we keep writing more and more data processing in JavaScript. So we've got a lot of set methods coming up for all the set operations like intersections and unions, differences, disjunction, being a subset, being a superset. We've got a lot of stuff, I really like that, called built-in iterator helpers. You know how map and filter and all that, it's array methods only, so it only works on arrays. They're synchronous, they only work on synchronous arrays, and they need a synchronous method and so forth. And often you have like an async iterator, a generator, stuff like that, a stream, and you want to apply a map or a filter or a reduce or sum or drop or take or all of these, and you have to write generative functions for that, including async iterators. Well, these provide these as built-ins. So any iterator or async iterator gets those methods with the same syntax, and it's all going to be built in. It's actually fairly easy to implement because it's all standard library, the implementation is well known. So it's stage 2, but it's moving fast, and it should be there pretty soon. Definitely within the next 3 years. I would say 2024 at worst, maybe 2023 if they move really fast in the next months. Also, there's something called a map.mplace that lets you do upserting in a map. You know, so you say, okay, put that value in. If it doesn't exist, do it this way. If it exists, do this. Okay, so like increment it or insert it or stuff like that. And collection normalization, it lets you, when you create a collection, you can equip it, a map or a set, you can equip it with methods that will coerce the key or coerce the value. For instance, here's a map that automatically lowercases the keys, okay? Or you could automatically extract a field from the keys that would be specific objects, and you extract the email automatically, stuff like that. So you could do the same thing for values, and it's pretty neat. This is going to be fucking huge. So there's a massive move, and I'm all here for it, in JavaScript towards functional programming, immutability. I mean, all those things are amazing. They make the performance better, they make the debugging experience better, they make a lot of things better, because that's functional programming. And we finally gonna have, this thing is moving really fast and has really good documentation and playground and cookbook already. And it's transpilable, so Babel can transpile it. Records and tuples, they're basically native, deep immutable alternatives to objects and arrays, okay? And they interact very well with regular objects, regular arrays, all the standard APIs, all the standard operators, and you have very easy ways to take an object or an array or a deep structure, convert it to the immutable equivalent, so you have referential identity. And there's a companion spec called JSON parse immutable that basically automates. It's fairly simple implementation, but automates the fact that JSON parse would produce not the regular object, but the immutable equivalent, so nested records and tuples for your stuff. So that's going to be really huge. Go check the links, go check the tutorial, the cookbooks. That's really exciting, and that's moving fast. So we should have it probably 2024, I think, because mostly right now it's finishing the test suite and getting native implementations. V8 is working on it already. So you can see that because before the opening curly or the opening square, you've got a hash sign again. That means it's a record or a tuple. And it's very easy to use, and it's absolutely great. Pipeline operators. I know at least one person among the speakers who's just drooling to get that thing in. It's been in the work for a long time. It recently moved to stage 2, which means the API is finalized. It's a life changer, really. It's something that we miss from all the functional languages. And it basically removes all the nested calls or nested string interpolation, arithmetic expressions, and puts them into clear stages that are much easier to read, much easier to compose, much easier to rearrange, to debug, to understand. And you've got a few before and after examples here. And you can see there's a placeholder in your expressions in the pipeline. Currently, it's the person sign who has the lead. For some reason, that part is still debated, and the contestant is the caret sign. No. Person is so much better. But that is going to change your life, and especially when you use it with unbound iterator helpers, like Lambda functions. It just makes your code so much more readable, so much easier to scan and to understand. So we can't wait to have that. Stage 1 now, 2 minutes left. I might make it. Object pick, object omit. Probably don't have to explain to you what it does. It lets you derive an object from another one by specifying a set of keys to retain or to omit, or providing a function, what we call a predictor function, that says dynamically keep that key, remove that key, and so forth. We used to do that with Lodash and so forth. It's going to be native. We might even have a syntax for it. You can check it in the bottom part, which is something we've been waiting for ages, because right now we have to destructure the object, get individual variables, and do a new object with the shorthand notation. So it's very verbose, it's not very dry. So this is stage 1 right now, but this is moving very fast. This was first introduced this summer. Extended mode regular expressions. So finally, we'll get at some point the ability to do multi-line regular expressions with comments and non-significant white space, readable regular expressions, basically. So it's going to be a cool thing. Policy maps and sets. Maps and sets are often used as a sort of cache with a capped capacity. You say, okay, so I'm going to keep in this map or in this set at most 200 values for memory reasons, and how do you evict the values when you put new ones in? You have the usual strategy, you know, first in, first out, last in, first out, most recently used, least recently used. That proposal puts all these combinations as standard types in the built-in types in the standard library. Okay, instead of just map and set. So you don't have to implement it yourself, which sometimes is a bit tricky to do. And finally, functional programming again, pattern matching. Pattern matching is something we have in a lot of functional languages and also in Python, in F#, in Elixir, in Rust. And that lets you, this is all an expression, match something, and that lets you do structural advanced conditioning plus algorithmic matching on your objects, on your entering value. And it's sort of a switch based on structure. So it can make your code really, really cool. You've got two real-world examples here. That's very advanced. And this is stuck in stage 1 because they're still hashing out the proper syntax, because this is only just a tiny part of what it should allow. But that's moving fast, and it might get there in 2025. Probably not before that. And I'm just less than a minute overboard. If you like amazing courses, check out our training courses, check out our screencasts. This link gives you 50% off auto screencasts. And tack! Thank you.